In this world, individuals can acquire epic skills by consuming the fruits from the skill tree. So if you're lucky, he might become a firebender or maybe even a sword saint.
現に名を馳せている冒険者は全員がとてつもなく強力なスキルの持ち主だ。
But when it comes to Light, all he became was a loser. On the day they were meant to get their skills, Light and his childhood friend Lena were on their way to the church to begin the ceremony.
頃からの夢だもんね。
ああ、今日やっと夢が叶うと思うと。
And they were excitedly talking about what skills they hoped to receive. Life has always wanted to become an adventurer, so he would be happy with any combat-type skill. But Lena doesn't really care what skill she gets as long as she can spend time with Light. Still, she's a bit nervous since no one really knows what kind of skill they'll get until they eat the fruit. But Light is sure they'll both get amazing skills. However, we already know how that turned out for him. When he and Lena went into the church that day, the Holy Sister told them all about how the skill fruits work. You're granted a skill once you eat the fruit, and it will guarantee you a job in any related field of your choice, all without any crippling student loan debt. They are allowed to pick any one of these fruits to get their skill, but there is a rule that they can't break no matter what. You're only allowed to eat one skill fruit over the course of your entire life because if you try to eat a second, they'll poison you. A lot of people have ended up dying because they didn't like their skill and tried to eat a second fruit. So the Holy Sister wants to make it very clear that eating more than one has a 100% fatality rate. Lena is shocked to hear that the fruits are so dangerous, but the Holy Sister assures her that as long as she doesn't eat a second fruit, then she'll be perfectly fine. With the warnings out of the way, the Holy Sister tells them to begin selecting their fruit, so Lena steps up first. She takes a bite out of one of the fruits, and she immediately feels something happening to her body. There's a blinding light, and Lena's body suddenly becomes very hot. So the Holy Sister realizes that this must be the legendary sword. Skill is incredibly rare, so she never thought she would get to see someone acquire it in person. But now that Lena is officially a sword, saying she's destined to become one of the greatest adventurers in the country, Light is really happy for Lena, so he congratulates her on her amazing skill. But it's his turn next, so he steps up to the altar and picks a skill fruit for himself. He knows he probably won't get something as good as the Sword Saint skill, but he's still hoping to acquire a decent combat skill so he can fight by Lena's side. However, as he takes a bite and the skill flows into his body, he's disappointed to hear that he's just in that master. The sister tries to be as supportive as she can, but yeah, the only fighting Light is going to be doing is against the pests. Out in the field, Light is devastated that his dreams of being an adventurer have been ruined, so he asks if he can try again. But the sister was very clear about the 100% fatality rate, so she's not letting him eat another fruit. Lena endeavors to uplift Light by announcing that she will remain in the village and cultivate fruits alongside him, as she is unconcerned with her actions as long as they are in close proximity. However, the Holy Sister is unyielding in her opposition to this fanciful display of love and compassion. Lena's Sword Saint skill is a once-in-a-decade marvel, so she's not going to let her waste that talent by becoming a farmer. She demands that Lena become an adventurer for the sake of this country, and in fact, she'll be taking her to the royal capital immediately so she can begin her training there. Lena doesn't have the guts to refuse the Holy Sister's demands, so she gets dragged off, but she promises to come back for Light someday. 3 months have passed since that fateful day, and Light is trying to make the best of his situation by leaning into his role as a farmer. He uses his powers to make the nuts grow nice and big, and when they are ripe, he sells them for profit in town. So his life isn't so bad as long as he pushes those intrusive thoughts to the back of his head. Anyway, he heads into town to sell his nuts, but since his nuts are so small, he gets paid very little for them. As he was walking back to his house, he noticed a poster with some news about Lena. She's apparently been promoted to S rank in the 3 months since she left the village and is doing incredibly well for herself. Naturally, she is delighted for her, however, hearing about her success only serves to reinforce his sense of failure. Even though he knows that he doesn't have the skill to become an adventurer, Light has been training every day in hopes that he might naturally unlock a sword skill or something. He repeatedly strikes at a tree stump, and he believes that if he can split it in half with a sword, then he will be strong enough to become an adventurer by his own merit. However, hard work doesn't always pay off, so the only thing he got from all that training was some bruised wrists. He falls to the floor in defeat and begins wondering if Lena still remembers him. She said she would come back for him, but with all the fame and fortune she's acquired, he wouldn't be shocked if she had forgotten his name and his face altogether. Just then, a little girl named Ayla walks up to Light and says she brought him a cup of water. She's pretty much an orphan, and the village chief didn't want to deal with her, so he kind of just left her on Light's doorstep. One day, Light saw that she had nowhere to go, so he decided to take her in, and the two have been living together ever since. Ayla tells him she's done with dinner, so if he wants to, he can come inside to eat, and Light happily obliges. He takes his first bite of the food, and while he eats, Ayla asks how today's harvest went. Overall, Light says today's profits were pretty good, especially since he started focusing on growing skill fruits recently. And by the way, he separated all the skill fruits into those boxes clearly marked with skull emojis, so under no circumstances should Ayla eat any of those. Ayla hadn't realized that the skill fruits were dangerous to eat, so Leg's warning is really helpful. Or at least it might have been an hour ago because they used a bunch of those fruits to make the stew they are eating right now. Light gets up in a panic and asks if she's sure she put skill fruits in the stew, but she definitely did. And from what the Holy Sister said, eating a second skill fruit is a guaranteed death sentence. All of a sudden,
熱い3ヶ月前と同じ感覚
Light's body begins to feel hot, and he feels a pain in his chest, so he believes this is how he will die. He falls to the floor, and in his final breath, he apologizes to Aaliyah because this is his fault for expecting her to understand the labels when she doesn't know how to read yet. However, as he lies there and awaits death, Light realizes that dying is taking an awfully long time. So he sits up, and to his surprise, he's perfectly fine. Ayla sees the confused expression on Light's face, so she asks him if he's fine. That's exactly why he's confused. He had a second skill fruit, which should have been fatal. So why and how is he still alive just then? He has a piercing headache and feels the power of a new skill rushing into his body. Just then, Ayla starts to feel a sharp pain in her body as well, and since she ate the stew, that must mean she's about to acquire a skill as well. All of a sudden, Ayla is able to see words floating in front of Light and reads out the info of his Nut Master skill. In addition to the ability to grow nuts, Light's skill also makes him immune to all nut poisons. Light is shocked and asks Ayla how she knows this, so she tells him she can see words floating in the air, and Light realizes she must have acquired some sort of appraisal skill. Ayla keeps reading Light's information and sees that he has a second skill now, so she tells him that he possesses an ability called Sword God. The Sword God skill greatly increases the Light's attack power when he's holding a sword, as well as greatly increasing his magic resistance. If what Ayla said is true, then this might mean that his dream can finally come true, so Light wants to test it out for himself. He runs outside with his sword and goes back into the forest to see if he really has a new sword skill. He raises his sword, and with a single swing, he slashes the tree stump in half, as well as that of the bigger tree behind it. So it's safe to say that as of this moment, Light is OP. The next day, he heads out into town so he can go to the guild and finally become an adventurer. He's really excited since he's always dreamed of coming here, and the first thing he spots is the notice board full of bounty quests. If they successfully complete a quest, then they'll be able to buy new equipment and tasty food. But making money isn't the only reason Light came here today. He wants to figure out how much his Sword God skill will actually help him in battle. And if it goes well for him, then he might be able to become an official adventurer. He tells Ayla to sit on a bench and wait for him while he gets a quest at the front desk. And while he's gone, Ayla takes the opportunity to use her appraisal skill on all the people in the guild. She's amazed by all the different types of skills that exist, but she's also shocked by how useless some of them are, like this guy who has a self-damaging skill. Just then, she hears a commotion over by the front desk, so she looks over and finds Light in the middle of an argument with one of the adventurers in the guild. The man recognizes Light as the guy who's always selling his nuts in the market, so he mocks him and says a loser like him doesn't belong in the guild. But Light completely ignores him and just tells Ayla that they can leave. Now the guy is offended that Light would dare to ignore him, so his completely normal reaction is to attack the Light with his sword. Light's Sword God skill also improves his reflexes. So he was easily able to block the attack. But the guy had no idea Light could do that, so he fully intended to catch a murder charge. Today, the guy's friends see that Light is capable of defending himself, so they convince Jean to just walk away because this isn't a fight he can win. Jean tries to play off his outburst and claims he never really intended to hurt Light, so he and his friends leave the guild to go on their first mission, and shortly after, Light and Ayla leave as well since Light has gotten their quest for them. They head out into the rocky plains, and Light is really excited since he might finally get to see a monster in person. But this place is dangerous, so he tells Ayla to stay close to him. They soon spot their target, and it's that slime monster over in the distance, so Light prepares himself to fight it. He cautiously approaches in an attempt to sneak up on it, but the slime notices him anyway, so Light goes for a full frontal assault instead. He's a lot stronger than he used to be, so he charges at the slime. He slices it in half, accidentally splitting the ground in the process. He's happy that his skill really is useful in battle, but he's going to have to work on his power management so he doesn't cause any more collateral damage. Ayla congratulates Light on his first successful quest. But to complete the quest, they need to cut the slime up and bring the parts back to the guild so they can exchange it for money. Ayla says she feels kind of bad about cutting the slime's body up, but Light reminds her that they'll earn enough money for pizza if they sell the slime parts. Ayla abandons her morals and starts analyzing the slime. Just then, they hear someone yelling on the other side of the plain, so they rush over and find Jean and his party being attacked by a huge ogre. They intentionally picked an easy quest so they could just kill a slime and go home, but they never expected to run into an ogre. The orc swings at them, and they all jump out of the way. But even if they manage to dodge that first attack, they stand no chance of winning against that thing. Light calls over to them to ask if they are all right, and as soon as Jean spots him, he comes up with a plan to escape. He and his friends start running straight at Light, and Light is a bit confused by what they are doing. Then they run past him, and he realizes they're trying to use him as bait so they can flee. The ogre now intends to attack Light, so he has no choice but to fight it, and in fact, this works out well for him since he needs to test the limits of his new skill. The ogre swings his mace at him, so Light jumps to the side to evade it, but he's playing a risky game, so Alo warns him that his sword god skill doesn't increase his defense, meaning if he gets hit even once, he's going to die. Even with the threat of dying, Light still refuses to back down from this fight since he's going to become the world's greatest adventurer, and if he plans to accomplish that goal, he needs to overcome this challenge. He has finally gotten used to his body's new strength, so Light jumps into the air, and as the ogre tries to strike him, he slashes its mace in half. No matter what it takes, he will make sure he catches up to Lena so the two of them can be together again. So in one swift motion, he brings his sword down and cuts the ogre cleanly in half, all while Jean and his friends watch from a nearby hill. A little while later, Light returns to the guild to exchange his items for money, but the receptionist finds it hard to believe that he managed to defeat an ogre all by himself. As proof, Light shows are the overhorn he brought back. Furthermore, Jean's friends confirm that Light is telling the truth because they witnessed the entire event. The receptionist believes him, so she asks him to wait a minute so she can get his reward, and in the meantime, Jean's friends thank Light again for saving them. Just then, a crowd forms at the front of the guild, so Light asks if something happened, and Jean informs him that the S-rank party has just returned. This happens to be the S-rank party that Lena joined, and this is the first time he has seen her in the last 3 months. So Light goes up to her and tries to say hello, but in response, Lena says, "I've never met this man before in my life." Naturally, Light is shocked that he's been rejected, but Ayla knows exactly what will cheer him up while they wait for their payment for the ogre job. And that's some good old pizza. Light is still sulking after his encounter, but Ayla's threat of eating everything before he has a chance to get a taste quickly snaps him out of it. He begins stuffing slices into his pizza hole, almost suffocating due to the strain. A stranger hands him something to drink and saves his life. It turns out that it's Lena. She's arrived in disguise, and before Light can blow her cover, she hushes him. She doesn't want Gross to find out that she's here. The three sit down together, and the girls introduce themselves. However, Light is primarily interested in understanding the situation. She tells him to keep it down and counters with a question of her own. Why was he at the guild? Light smirks and proudly declares that he and his little peaks of vacuum that he calls an assistant are actually adventures. It's a long story, and Light is happy to tell it. In the end, Lena's overjoyed to discover that her friend has finally achieved his dream. Light says that with his incredible sword god skill, he'll catch up to her level in no time. Lena's happy to see that Light hasn't changed one bit since they last saw each other. Light asks about Sacred, eager to find out what life is like with the greatest party, but Lena's mood changes at the mention of her team. As it turns out, there are challenges along the way. Lena explains that she's only working with them because that is what the Holy Sister has commanded. She truly has no choice in the situation. The money is great, but the vibes are just off. Lena warns him to stay away from Sacred. They're not the people he thinks they are. That explains why she pretended not to know him earlier. But once I know why she doesn't like Sacred. Lena flashes back to 2 months prior while she and her team were on a job. Their opponent was a giant viper terrorizing the locals. Fortunately, fire weakens such monsters, so Gross instructed the resident pyromaniac to intensify the heat. The adventurers easily defeated the serpent, and the fight proceeded smoothly. But as the wind shifted, a new problem arose. The fire began to spread to nearby farms. Lena tried to warn the others, but Gross couldn't care less. When all is said and done, the farm is completely destroyed and the farmers are ruined. Gross coldly explains that crops can be regrown, but lives cannot. If they hadn't done what they did, then that monster would have hurt who knows how many people. This doesn't sit right with Lena, who goes to complain to the Holy Sister, but as expected, she doesn't care either. She tells Lena that all history will remember is how the great party Sacred defeated an evil monster. As far as the sister is concerned, Lena did a good job, and that's all that matters. Ever since then, the Sword Saint has been troubled by her teammates' callous attitude towards the people they're meant to be serving. Light sees how this has affected his friend and tells her that if she doesn't like her party, she can just join his. Things are never that easy, however, and Lena has to turn down his offer. Light asks if she really wants to stay with Sacred, then why is she crying? Embarrassed, Lena suddenly gets up and leaves in a hurry, leaving Light more worried about his friend than ever. Later that day, he and Isla receive their hefty reward from the guild. It's a whopping 10,000 gold that leaves Isla drooling at the sight of it. But not even all that money can cheer up Light. He's still concerned about Sacred, so Isla tells him that if he's really that worried, he should just ask them himself. As it happens, Gross is currently enjoying himself in the VIP lounge with a couple of QEDs and some bottle service. He's in the middle of recanting a tale of his heroic bravery when the guild receptionist approaches with a complaint from the locals. Apparently, he and his team accidentally caused some more collateral on their last mission. Something about destroying a reservoir. Gross doesn't have time to listen to every little detail and reminds the receptionist that sometimes sacrifices have to be made for the greater good. He asserts that it's unrealistic to expect him to constantly monitor every insect beneath his feet while walking. At this point, Light has heard enough and barges in, demanding that Lena be set free from Sacred. Gross mistakes him for another one of her overzealous fans and, with a snap of his fingers, has security throw the rowdy Light out of the lounge. Some other adventurers warn Light that if he messes with Sacred, then he's bound to get in trouble with the Holy Sister, which would mean no work and no pay. Isla's worried about Light, but he tells her that it's all right. He knows what he has to do now. There's just one problem. They might not be able to eat pizza anymore. Back with Sacred, the team is fawning over their latest gift from the Holy Sister, a sweet new wax. Lena, however, is in her own world, thinking about what Light said to her. Making up her mind, she declares that she's leaving Sacred. The others are surprised. Why would anyone want to leave the greatest team of adventurers in the world? But Lena is certain she wants to be a hero she can be proud of, not whatever they are. She makes for the door, but before she can leave, Gross suddenly stands in her way. He draws his blades and places them against her throat. He says that the audacity to think she could defy him and leave the party is staggering. Lena reaches for her own weapon, but Gross reminds her that no matter how good she is with that sword, there's nothing she can do to stop him and his power. Realizing that she's beat, Lena stands down. It turns out that Gross possesses a powerful pimp hand. He gives Lena a hard slap and drops her to the floor. displaying just how much of a psycho he is when he tells her that she and he are going to be heroes together forever. Later on, people are cheering in the streets as Sacred departs for their latest job to save the day. Lena meekly follows along, trying to convince herself that the only way she can help people is to stick around. Jess and the team stop when they notice a lone figure standing in their path. Light has returned, and this time he's not leaving until his friend leaves with him. He tells her that he and Isla are off to go fight some monsters. Considering they are complete noobs at this whole adventure business, she should join them and come help. After all, they did promise each other that they would become adventurers together. Gross interrupts, telling Light to get out of the way because they have work to do in return. Light draws his sword and throws down the challenge. He and Gross will duel for Lena's freedom. All it takes is calling Gross a chicken for him to take the bait, and the fight is on right then and there. Before the match begins, Gross lets Light know that if he loses, he'll be banished from the Adventurers Guild and the Holy City forever. Lena is horrified because she doesn't believe that Light can win, and Gross agrees. He gives our hero one last chance to give up now. Ayla uses her eye Pokedex to reveal Gross's superhuman speed. To keep things fair, Light thinks about revealing both of his powers as well, but barely gets the word out before Gross is on him. In a flash, the two lock swords as the crowd gathers to watch the duel. Even knowing about it, Light is still surprised by the speed of his opponent. Gross unleashes a flurry of super-fast strikes that Light just barely manages to fend off with a dash. Gross appears behind him, catching Light off guard again and again. As anticipated for an S rank, Gross is not to be taken lightly. Not even the ogre was this tough. With Lean on the line, Light shows no fear as he tries to charge into the attack, but his blow is easily counted, and in the end, his sword is broken by Gross's superior skill. The guy nicknamed Godspeed laughs at the foolish boy and tells Lena that if she swears complete obedience to him, then he might consider mercy. Light gets back on his feet and tells Lena not to worry, he'll win this. Light's confidence feels like more than just empty words, and Lena walks over to him, joined by Isla as well. She tells Light that she believes in him and she knows he'll win. Ready for round 2, Light raises his broken blade and tells Gross to hurry up and bring it. He's got adventuring to do and doesn't have time to waste on the likes of him. Gross is furious and decides that he'll just have to destroy them all. Light is ready, but the only problem is that he needs a new weapon. Looking around, he spots a man on the sidelines with a broom in his hand. He runs over and asks if he can borrow it for a minute. Seeing his enemy wield a simple broom against him only makes Gross all the more angry. He can't believe this joke, but Light isn't laughing. With his skill, even a simple broom can become a weapon without equal. All he needs to do is imagine it. When Gross can no longer bear the ridicule, he launches another attack and advances rapidly. Light realizes the reason he can't keep up is because all he's been doing up until now is watching and reacting. Now it's time to be proactive and predict where Gross will be. Instead of trying to match his speed, closing his eyes, and focusing his mind, Light waits for the right moment to strike. Just as it appears that Gross is about to end the fight, Light seizes the opportunity and strikes with his sword. Or rather, his broom finds its mark, cracking across Gross's face with a satisfying impact and sending him flying. Just like that, Light has swept up the competition and ended the duel with a win. Needless to say, everyone is shocked to see the outcome, including the other members of Sacred. Light warns them that if they decide to mess with him or his teammates, they'll get the same treatment as Gross. With that done, our hero turns to Lena. He asked her one more time if she would like to join him on his adventures, and she is more than happy to say yes. She's been wanting to say that for a long time now. Back at Lena's house, Isla and Light are cheerfully tending to the garden. It's been a week now since the duel, and things are going pretty well for the party. Lena wonders if Light's injuries have healed, and he tells her that he feels fit enough to come with her to the guild for a job or two. Just then, a ring at the front gate announces a messenger from the Holy Sister. The young man informs Lena that the sister has summoned her to talk about what happened with Sacred, but Lena tells them that her answer hasn't changed. She won't return to her old team no matter what. The boy tells her that things will change now, and she won't be receiving the same benefits she once did. This becomes clear when the three go looking for work at the guild and find their selection of job offerings to be limited. The only tasks they're allowed to take are things like clearing out the stores of rats, rebuilding broken homes, and saving lost cats. Isla realizes that her meager jobs won't be enough to pay the bills, let alone afford pizza, a realization that nearly sends her into a coma. Despite all that, Lena gladly accepts the job, all too ready to finally start helping people who really need it. That people are surprised and delighted to have a famous hero like the Sword Saint herself show up to help, and our heroes waste no time getting to work repairing the homes. With the powers of the Sword Saint and the Sword God combined, the two make quick work of every task they're given. By the end of a long day, the three count their earnings and discover that they've barely made any money. I'll ask how much it is in terms of pizza, and the answer isn't good. For Lena, however, the money doesn't matter. Being able to help those in need is all that she's ever wanted. She's satisfied, but she worries that this isn't the kind of adventure that Light wanted it to be. Light reassures her that this has been great for him, and he wouldn't have it any other way. To celebrate, he suggests the three of them make a vow, kind of like wishing upon a star for luck. He comes up with a name for their party, Luxuria, which means an imperfect light. With their new party formed, the three vow to adventure together forever. Meanwhile, the Holy Sister is plotting something sinister for the trio. She has a new S-ranked job only they can accomplish, and while someone as talented as Lena might survive, the other two might not be so fortunate. A while later, Light and his new team travel across a bridge that is covered in fog they can hardly see. Belina explains that the place they are looking for should be nearby Jess and Light's. Horse loses its mind, and Lena reveals that they have arrived. A flashback to 3 hours before shows our heroes arriving at the Adventurers Guild. Rumors were starting to spread saying that Lena was going to take a job, and Light declares that this new group called Luxuria will take care of it. The receptionist's gratitude stems from the urgency of her job, yet she remains uncertain about the nature of the monsters causing the trouble. 2 months ago, a hero party was doing some research, and they suddenly vanished. All other adventurers that were sent to find them also disappeared, one after another. Isla is terrible, and they are told that a total of 18 adventurers have gone missing, and they were all A and B rank. It's terrifying to hear that so many powerful adventurers have disappeared, and Lena is shocked to learn that this included some of her teachers. There isn't much information about what's going on, and all they know is that it's all happening near the house of a former noble. This house was built 30 years ago by the man who made his fortune adventuring. There is no record of what skills he possessed, and the guy passed away, leaving the manor to fall into despair. The receptionist reveals that the completion conditions for this job are finding the missing adventurers and determining the cause of the disappearances. Lena fears that this job might be too difficult for them, but our boy Light is ready to go. Isla's right behind him and insists that they get some peeks on the way. The receptionist can't believe that such a small girl would be going with them, but Light explains that she is dependable and she has the appraisal skill. Such a young kid eating a skill fruit is unheard of, so Light explains that it was an accident before he can get in trouble. They head to the mission, but Light has never ridden a horse before, and he fears it might not go so well. Back to the present, our heroes make their way to the giant house. Lena is deep in thought while coming up with a plan on how to enter the house. But Light is too busy thinking about how some adventurers must make a ton of money. Lena explains that it's actually not that unusual for adventurers to have lavish homes. High-ranking adventurers who have been working for years make tons of cash, and Lena says that she could probably afford a house like this one in a couple more weeks. Light dreams of building a house one day, fully equipped with a huge farm and training grounds. Isla pushes herself into this dream of his and says that they should have a candy house too. Her excitement doesn't last long, however, as she falls off the cliff. The other two try to help her, but they all just end up falling together. Light doesn't panic, however, and simply uses the wind pressure from one of his attacks to slow them down. They land safely, but the danger isn't over. The situation deteriorates as they find themselves encircled by monsters. Light's excitement overwhelms him as he satisfies his bloodlust. Helena has noticed something. A closer look at the monsters shows that they are wearing armor. Isla uses her appraisal skill and determines that the monsters were actually once human. They are undead now, and they create more of themselves by biting others. Isla tells everyone not to let the undead touch them, but Light is too busy wondering if he just killed an adventurer. Just then, Isla determines that the undead actually have skills. Some of the skill names are archery, thermal resistance, and sprint. This matches the skills of the missing adventurers. Selena determines that this must be why they never returned. Light is having a hard time coming to grips with having to eliminate his fellow adventurers. But there's no time for that. Lena must rescue him from becoming zombie food, and she tells the fallen hero to rest in peace. Lena explains that they can't just leave the adventurers this way, and the right thing to do is send them to the afterlife. There's way too many zombies, though, so they decide to head into the house to search for survivors. Turns out to just be more zombies inside, and Lena wastes no time when taking them out. Light is amazed as he watches her because she is quickly switching between attacks depending on the enemy type. He explains that the heart is the weakness of the undead, who still look like humans. However, for the ones that are just bones, Lena cuts right through their spines. Isla can't believe what she's watching either, as it's clear that Lena has mastered the Sword Saint. Lighting goes on to say that Sword Saint and Sword God are nearly equal skills. His Sword God is a little stronger, but he hasn't mastered his skill like Lena has. Lena is several steps ahead of him, but Life refuses to just stand and watch. He jumps in and quickly shows his improved skills. Everyone is terrified when Isla comes under attack, but Lena saves her just in time. I can't believe that she stabbed the thing right between the gaps in its armor. But Lena says it's no big deal. She spent the past 3 months fighting more battles than she ever wanted to. Luckily, Isla's okay, but Light knows that he messed up. Fighting while protecting Isla is extremely difficult, and one slip-up could end up being fatal. Light refuses to let anything bad happen to her and vows never to hesitate again. Before they continue, Light wonders why there are so many undead. Only 18 adventurers went missing, but they have seen way more zombies than that. Something doesn't feel right, and they all wonder what happened in this place. As they head deeper inside, they come across a portrait of the noble. Eventually, they encounter more undead, and Light is taken aback by their sudden appearance. What's even more surprising is that some of the undead seem to be acting as decoys. It's like they have minds of their own. So Light tells Isla to check her appraisal ability, then shockingly reveals that these undead have been tamed. Someone is controlling them, and Light notices some threads attached to the undead. Isla's doing more work than she has ever done, and reveals that the threads are being used to transmit magic power. The one controlling them should be on the other end, so they follow the threads. It leads them to a ballroom, but Light somehow has no clue what that is. He assumes that it's for playing ball sports, but Lena explains that it's for dance parties, and a mysterious voice welcomes them and says that she has been waiting for a really long time. She introduces herself as Jitanya, and she somehow knows Light's name. Light is glad to finally see a living person, but he can tell that this chick is not one of the survivors just, and the crazy girl pull on her zombie puppets, and Isla explains that she has the necromancy skill. It allows her to control corpse and spirit-type monsters. That isn't all, as she can also use their skills and unique traits. Light tries to tell Jitanya to help them with their mission, but she is uninterested. She has something much more important to do, and that is to kill the Fruit Master. Light just barely manages to stop a zombie from attacking him, and he demands to know why the crazy girl is trying to end his life. Jitanya reveals that those are just the orders she was given, but she refuses to say any more. Jitanya mentioned something about being part of the Black Swan earlier, but Lena has never heard of that party before. Worst of all, she has never even heard of the necromancy skill. Jitanya is just looking for some entertainment, so she sends out her minions, but they're no match for the teamwork of our heroes. Jitanya isn't interested in Lena, however, and she has her zombies isolate them. She does this by sending zombies with the best skills. Isla does her best to be useful and reveals what their skills are. A girl has the skill called Mirror Strike, which allows her to attack with mirror images on either side of her. As for the guy, he has the Claw skill, which causes his nails to extend and harden while boosting his strength. Jitanya doesn't take kindly to Isla spilling all the information, so she decides that she will have to eliminate her first. Thankfully, Light doesn't hesitate to rescue her this time, but they're quickly surrounded. The zombies are tough enough on their own, so Light doesn't know if he can fight and protect Isla at the same time. Jitanya is relentless, so she sends in the zombies and Light does his best to keep them back. Jitanya doesn't let him get a second's rest, and it's like the wave of zombies is never ending. Lena is also occupied, but she is particularly struggling with the realization that she must destroy them. As it turns out, these two adventurers were the first to reach out to her when she was a newbie. The two of them taught her a lot, while also being very kind. Selena struggles to fight them. She's running out of time, and she's worried because she can't see Light or Isla trying to fight these zombies head-on. It's too difficult, so she comes up with a much better idea. Lena cuts the threads controlling her two teachers, and she is shocked to hear their spirit speaking to her. This is the end for the adventurers, so they put their dreams in the hands of Lena. They say that bringing them down isn't wrong, and Lena realizes that the best tribute she can give them is to destroy the rotting, mutated corpses. She declares that she will do it quickly and painlessly, and slices them in two. Lena sheds a tear as the deed is done, and she says farewell to her kind teachers. Nearby, Light is getting exhausted after doing so much fighting. Just then he realizes something and tells, "I let her check if the necromancy skill is able to create undead." She reveals that it doesn't create them, and the skill can only control the undead in the area. This manor has been deserted for years, so Light can only wonder where all the undead are coming from. Unlike a graveyard or battlefield, there wouldn't be many undead people here to begin with. Light desperately wants to find the answer, so Allah gets to work on it. Britannia is impressed that Light isn't just a great fighter, he's also a deep thinker. She isn't pleased with all the snooping Isla is doing though, so she continues to try and take her out. Light calls her a coward for attacking a child, but Britannia doesn't care about manners. Light knows that he has to stay close to Isla, but the zombies will just wear him down if he only defends. This only leaves one answer, and Light tells Isla to get on his back and hold on tight. Britannia is jealous, but Light has had enough of her casual attitude. Back with the nun, we see that she is watching something in the future. She explains that it's a shadow devouring the moon. It's quite the sight, and she is sure that not even the strongest people alive can stand a chance against what she is watching. As Light prepares to defend against the army of zombies, he tries to figure out why more keep appearing. Unfortunately, there are too many of them for her to analyze properly, so they must go somewhere that will give her a broader view. Light takes her to the air and grabs onto a chandelier, giving Ayla the perfect view. Light is a weakling, however, and his arm starts to give up before she can use her appraisal skill. Ayla knows that she's been eating a lot of pizza, but she doesn't think that she has gained any weight. Light reminds her that they're in the middle of the battle and tells her to hurry up. Finally, her appraisal reveals that one of the undead is using the summon skill. Light realizes that this must be the noble that died, and Britannia fears that they're about to figure out the trick and they notice some sort of death god-looking thing, and Allah explains that it's a soul reaper. It's a very dangerous monster that turns living people into undead. If someone touches its scythe or the monster's sludge, then they will be turned into an undead. It's clear now that Britannia is controlling the Soul Reaper and the undead it created. Jitania reveals that the noble was the one who summoned the Soul Reaper, and she laughs at the irony. The once famous hero was turned into an undead by the very monster he summoned. Light realizes that the noble summoned the Soul Reaper to eliminate the adventurers coming to his house, but he can't figure out why. Jitania calls him naive as he only sees the nice, shiny parts of the world. She wants to show him the truth, so she wonders if he knows what taboo skills are. They are skills that make others ostracize and hate someone for simply possessing one. The noble summon skill is considered to be one of these taboo skills. At first, the people praised the noble as a hero with the powerful skill. However, fear eventually took them over. They pondered what might transpire if the hero experienced a shift in sentiment one day. If a terrifying monster ever showed up, the noble could turn that power against them. Consumed by this fear, both the people and the government began distancing themselves from the noble. In the end, the noble was even falsely accused of treason. Light is stunned as he realizes that that must be why the noble fled to this miserable and remote house. Unfortunately, fleeing wasn't enough, as assassins were sent to find him over and over again. Most recently, a party of assassins was sent, and they were pretending to be conducting research in the area. The noble seems to have summoned this Soul Reaper in order to drive off the intruders. Light is horrified because the guild said that they were just normal adventurers that went missing, not assassins. Tritania is done with the lessons in reality, so she wants to get back to fighting. With a maniacal laugh, she explains that by using her necromancy skill to control the summon user, she can endlessly play with her puppets. Light shakes uncontrollably as he thinks about how everyone feared that the noble would turn his immense power against them. Light's Fruit Master skill is probably the most dangerous of all, as it could be used to acquire an infinite number of skills. It's definitely a taboo skill, and he fears what people would think if they found out. Someday he might be ostracized and forced to run away, just like the noble Jazz. Then he remembers that let's protect Isla, so he begins fighting back. While observing the undead, Light notices that Jitanya is using necromancy to designate where the undead will attack. Isla confirms this and explains that the monsters under her control can only repeat the same attack over and over again until they receive new instructions. Jitanya doesn't want to give them the time to think of a plan, so she sends in her army for the final attack. Light is ready, however, so he prepares his Surge Blade attack. Jitanya anticipated this, but she was taken aback when Light revealed that he was merely playing a decoy. He declares that he is not Dritanya's real opponent, leaving Dritanya stunned by Lena's unexpected appearance. She quickly commands her army to attack the Sword Saint instead, but it's too late. Lena has eliminated the Soul Reaper. Lena reveals that she doesn't want to end Dritanya's life, she simply has a mountain of questions. The fight isn't over, however, as the undead noble is still there, so Light takes care of him with one attack. Light tells him to rest in peace, but the noble has a message for Light. The noble says that he hates skills and declares that Light will grow to hate them one day as well. The noble begins to disappear, and Light announces that he will never end up like that guy. Lena panics as Dratani begins to do something. Lena tells our boy Light to run away as Dratani is forcing the noble to summon something. Dratani demands that the noble show everyone his final burst of power, so he begins to summon something massive. Everyone then watches in horror as all the extended or sacrificed in order to summon a giant, terrifying dragon beast. This creature is even greater than Dritanya imagined, but the beast is uncontrollable and it knocks her away. Isla explains that this is a wicked dragon, but Lena had no idea that they actually existed. Lena has only heard of them as they are targets of the highest level hunts. They're not even Estrek adventurers. It feels like they can win if they combine their powers, but Allah says that they shouldn't even try. The wicked dragon is resistant to the slashing attacks, and its scales will block all their sword attacks. However, Light's confidence is elevated due to his sword god skill. He jumps in to use his demon dash, but his sword just ends up getting destroyed. Light just barely manages to dodge the counter, and now he doesn't know what to do. The second they tried to run away, the beast would just eliminate them, so they need a plan. Lena has her own ideas, however, as her only goal is to make sure that the other two escape alive. Just and Isla come up with an idea and reveal that she brought a skill fruit nearby. Jatani commends the noble for summoning a wicked dragon, one of the most powerful monsters. She says that not even she can control it as she passes out, and we see that a mysterious man has arrived to take her away. Isla brought the skill fruit because she thought it would be useful, and now they have no other option but for Light to eat it. Lena reminds him that he will die if he eats another skill fruit, but Light reveals to her that he's immune to the skill fruit's poison. He is the fruit master, and he should be able to eat as many skilled fruits as he wants. Lena correctly points out that he might get a useless skill, or even one that interferes with Sword God. There is no other way for them to win, however, so he just eats the skill fruit. Pain surges through his body again, and Lena must block an attack from the giant dragon. Allah uses her appraisal to see what skill Light has received, but it turns out that it's just a bug-resistant skill. Light desperately wonders if there's any chance that the wicked dragon is a bug, but there is none. Lena continues to block the dragon's attack, but she can't do it forever. She declares that she will hold the dragon's attention, so Light tells Isla to give him more skill fruits. He asks for 2 of them this time as he plans to just eat them at the same time. Isla fears that something bad might happen to him, but there's no time to argue as Lena might die. Light that needs 2 skill fruits, but he gets the completely useless catch armor skill. Isla would love this one for herself as it makes cats like you, but it's terrible for battle. The other skill is the weapon durability boost that makes his weapons break less often. This would have been useful before the fight, but his sword is already broken. Just then, Isla becomes terrified as Light feels even more pain than usual. His body's on fire, and he realizes that eating 2 at once doubles the side effects. If he eats another one and it's not a good skill, then he won't be able to move. Meanwhile, Lena continues her battle, but her blade shatters after her next attack. The beast lets out a scream and absolutely smashes Lena into a wall. Lena is in danger as the dragon wants to end her life, so Light must bet everything on the last skill, fruit. Light feels immense pain once more after biting the fruit, but this time something strange happens. The wicked dragon moves in on Lena to land the final blow, but Light gets his attention with the rock and he apologizes to Lena for making her wait. Isla reveals that the skill he received is called Sleep Pixie. Any creature that inhales the pixie scales is put to sleep. Light sends his pixie right towards the face of the dragon, and she spreads her scales everywhere. The dragon begins to rampage, but Light wonders why it isn't going to sleep. It's because the pixie scales are being wiped out before they reach the dragon. So Light looks at a piece of his sword and comes up with an idea. Light asks Leela to check how far he can send the pixie, and she reveals that its limit is 3 meters. Light then realizes that if he wanted to inhale the scales, then he needs to go higher. The girls are confused when Light holds onto his broken sword, but Light reminds them that he's the sword god. In his hands, even a broken sword is still a sword. While holding the pieces, it will allow him to activate his sword god skill. The girls are then amazed when he uses his newly acquired weapon durability skill to make the sword stronger, and he launches the piece to destroy the roof. They are then stunned when Light climbs up the falling rubble so he can land right on the dragon's face. Light's pixies are too close for it to dodge now, so he unleashes its scales. The dragon can avoid inhaling them, so Light celebrates. After the giant wicked dragon falls asleep, the girls celebrate as well, but Light reminds them that they have to escape. Lena makes sure to pick something up before they leave, and they rush out of the building. They just make it outside before the mansion collapses, and Light declares that it's time to head home. They will then collect a reward and feast on a nice meal. They rush back as fast as they can because Light wants to make sure that he gets everyone home safe. They eventually arrive, and Light credits Isla for their success. Light shares the same sentiment with Lena, but when he suddenly collapses, the girls fear for his life. Back at the church, we see that your Tanya has been brought back to the nun. She wonders what the guy thought of the fruit master, and he reveals that he was surprised by him. He heard that Light defeated the wicked dragon, but this guy is still sure that he possesses no threat to the Black Swan. The nun is glad to hear it, but she is stunned that Light has gotten so strong. She credits something called the Alpiri, but quickly wonders if something else is behind his power. She then questions if there's something special about Light. However, she realizes that it no longer matters as the time for Light's meeting with someone is drawing near. I appreciate you viewing my anime recap, Unruly Family. Please let me know what you think about this anime recap by liking, sharing, and commenting, and please subscribe to the channel to help us reach 5,000 subscribers.
Take you out.